Nation, and happy game day eve. That's right. We made it. The bye week is done. We are finally here. We have Ohio State football in 30 short hours. So we can rest easy tonight knowing that our boys will be back on the field. Um, and we made it through largely unscathed. Now, it is crazy to me how quickly the national media has just forgotten, it seems, about this Ohio State team and everything that we've done so far this year. Granted, it hasn't been a super difficult schedule for Ohio State so far, but the discussions of just Hendon Hooker's now Heisman favorite, is this Tennessee team the reincarnation of 2019 LSU? They're the number one team, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, all for, beating Alabama by 3 points at home. Granted, great win, great game. I get it. I understand it. Are they one of the top 5 teams in the country? Absolutely. Are they one of the top 2 teams? Potentially. We'll know that. We'll know more about that here in a couple weeks when they go to Georgia and play Georgia. And we'll see if they can actually stand up to that defense and put up 52 on that defense, which I don't think they will. I think Georgia is going to come out of the East at the end of the days. And if I'm wrong on that, I'll be the first person to admit it. But are they 2019 LSU? Absolutely not. I think this Ohio State team is probably more closely related to that team. But you go idle for a week and everybody forgets, apparently. Everybody forgets the numbers that CJ Stroud has been putting up. Everybody forgets how dominant this Ohio State offense has looked. Again, granted, the schedule hasn't been super difficult so far, but we've done everything that this team has needed to do on the field. You play the teams that are in front of you, and you play them the way that you need to if you're a top team in the country. And Ohio State has won every game by double digits. And, granted, there are also national media pundits that are calling Ohio State the best team, et cetera, et cetera. But it's just funny to me, especially all the talking heads at ESPN specifically, how quickly they have jumped on the Tennessee bandwagon and jumped off of Alabama, jumped off of Georgia, jumped off of Ohio State, jumped off of Michigan. And it's just pretty much all in on Tennessee now. I mean, I even saw the other day, Hendon Hooker was voted as the All-American quarterback from ESPN over CJ Stroud, whereas you had, I believe CBS had CJ Stroud, Sporting News had CJ Stroud. A lot of the other publications had CJ Stroud as that quarterback, and alongside some other offensive All-Americans. But I digress. That's not what today's show is about. If you listened last week, we covered some of the top games in college football for the weekend and made my picks on where I'm putting my money. Now, last week could have gone better. Started off really, really poorly. I think the first 4 games I lost, but we ended up 5-5. So I will gladly take it with that start. And a couple of those could have easily gone the other way. So, at one point in the day, I was hoping for maybe an 8-2, 7-3. Didn't pan out the way that I wanted it to, but 5-5 is still a decent number. And hopefully this week we'll be able to improve upon that and get back above 500. The first game I want to cover here is going to be Ohio State and Iowa. Obviously, the game that everybody here is looking forward to the most. Iowa's defense is likely, could be considered the top defense in the country. You've got the number 3 scoring defense from them, number 7 total defense. And offensively, we also know what we're getting with Iowa, and it's not good. 131st in total offense, 127th in scoring offense. TJ and I talked about it earlier in the week with how just inept this offense is, and how it hasn't lived up to what the current college football status is. From an offensive standpoint. And you look on the other side, Ohio State is the embodiment of what college football offenses are at this point in time. You've got the number 2 total offense, number 1 scoring offense. And then defensively, the Buckeyes have obviously played a lot better this year than they did last year. Number 5 total defense, number 10 scoring defense, albeit against the 82nd ranked strength of schedule versus Iowa's 45. So Iowa's played a little bit better competition. They've scored over 7 points, I think, twice this season, two or three times maybe. So it's not good. Are they going to be able to keep up with Ohio State? No. Are they going to be able to get some stops against Ohio State? I think so. I don't see Ohio State getting over 40 points in this game. I just think this defense from Iowa is going to be a little bit too stingy, especially in the first part of the game. Um, and it won't be close, but they'll be able to keep Ohio State at least struggling to score those big explosive plays for most of the game. But at the end of the day, I see Ohio State winning this game 38-10. Not covering necessarily because the when I looked here for this podcast, the number was I think 29.5. Didn't want to take it. If you can get it at 27.5, I like it. I like Ohio State to win by 28, pretty much on the spot. But I do like it at the under 49.5, as opposed to taking 29.5 for the Buckeyes. In the next game, Clemson and Syracuse. Clemson, I still don't really know what to think about Clemson. They look good at times. They look pedestrian at times. Their offense is not what I think we would expect their offense to be at this point with a quarterback like DJU. Number 21 scoring offense, number 61 total offense, and Syracuse hasn't beat pretty much in every category, both offensively and defensively here. So I think the biggest change is going to be in the Syracuse defense and being able to get a couple stops. They haven't played a great schedule so far, 114th in the country in strength of schedule rank, versus Clemson's 63. So I think, Clemson's probably going to pull this game out at home against Syracuse, but Syracuse played them tough last year. And Dino Babers has played them tough a couple times in his tenure, and I think he could potentially, if he's going to get a win against Clemson at any point, it's probably going to come this year. I think both of these teams are largely what they were last year, and Clemson played them close, or Syracuse rather played them close. I think it was 17-14 last year. So I see a similar game, probably a little bit more higher scoring than that, than what it was last year. But I do like Syracuse plus the points here, getting 13.5 on the road. So I'm going to take the points here and hope for a close game between these two. Oklahoma State and Texas. Oklahoma State coming off of a heartbreaking loss at TCU last week. 3-point loss in double overtime. I mean, that's hard fought. It's going to be tough to get back up for a game against a team like Texas. Although you are going back home. I like Oklahoma State at home versus Texas. I think Texas has been playing really well of late, and they've definitely had their share of close games throughout the year. So, they could very well be an undefeated team if a couple possessions go their way against Alabama and against Texas Tech. Going on the road to Oklahoma State, though, this scoring offense from Oklahoma State, fifth in the country, I think they're going to be able to put up points against Texas pretty well. I think they'll be able to cover their own at least, and I think Texas will be able to hang with them for a large part of it. It's going to be a close game. Texas probably still would get the win here, but I do like Oklahoma State plus the points at home, getting 6.5. UCLA and Oregon, future Big Ten matchup here coming, hopefully. Oregon, 16th ranked strength of schedule, 8th total offense, 9th in scoring offense. I keep wanting to think that this team is the same team that we saw against Georgia. And yeah, personnel's the same for all intents and purposes. It's the same. Bo Nix has played a lot better than he did in that game. Obviously, their numbers have improved much more than I actually had thought they did. So this is far and away not the Oregon team that we saw early in the year. It's a team that I think is much improved both offensively and defensively to a point. And UCLA, they haven't been tested really. 100th ranked strength of schedule. Their total offense is good. I mean, under Chip Kelly, they've definitely been explosive. 12th ranked scoring offense, 12th total offense, and defensively they've played well. Also, 33rd ranked total defense. They essentially beat Oregon in every category that matters. But I like Oregon at home. Autzon's going to be a crazy environment. They're going to be loud. It's not a large venue, but it is a loud venue. And I think that that's going to be ultimately the difference maker here. I think they pull away late, and I like them plus or minus the points here, minus 6 points at home. Alabama and Mississippi State. This one, another one that I've gone back and forth with. The spread is 21 points. Alabama obviously coming off of the loss at Tennessee. How do they bounce back? I'm never going to put it past Nick Saban to get this team ready and prepared, especially after a loss. And especially after losing the way that they did. I mean, it was completely undisciplined from an Alabama team, and you never expect that to happen. And I expect this game will be as clean as possible from Alabama. And if it's not, then there's going to be a lot worse practices next week for this team. But I think Nick Saban's going to have them ready. I like them to win the game, and I don't think it's particularly close at the end of the day. I don't know that the score will necessarily show that outright. But Mississippi State, Will Rogers has been a quarterback in the SEC that's I think he's third or top three in quarterbacks in the SEC right now. He's put up numbers offensively. They've played really well throughout the year, and I think they'll be able to hang with them for a little while. I don't think they'll be able to hang the entire game. I think Alabama will probably get a couple scores, maybe late. Maybe Mississippi State gets a score or two late to make it closer than what it otherwise seems. But the points here, I like. I just think Mississippi State's going to be able to put some points up on them, and be able to test these defensive backs, not necessarily to the same extent that Tennessee was able to, but I think they will be able to test them somewhat, and I think they keep it within 21. Minnesota and Penn State. Minnesota coming off the loss against Illinois. Didn't see that coming, honestly. I thought Minnesota was a better team than that, and I thought they were the better team than Illinois has been. But Illinois proved me wrong, and I don't know what to now expect from this team. I think they're on a 3-game losing streak now. I had them winning the Big Ten West, and now that seems like a pipe dream. They're going to have to do a lot of serious work to finish out the season if that's going to be the case. But you got Penn State, who I also thought was better than what they showed against Michigan, and it was not a good showing at all. And I don't know that they're as scary of a team as what they would have been 2-3 weeks ago if you looked at the schedule for Ohio State. Do they get caught looking ahead next week to Ohio State? That's another big question here, because that's going to be a much bigger game than what they have this week. Although they did change it at the beginning of the year for Minnesota to be the night game, the whiteout game, because they do want to win that game at some point in recent history, and they haven't been able to do it playing against Ohio State. So I think the crowd's going to be a huge factor here. The whiteout game is always one that's a tough atmosphere to play in, and I don't think Minnesota is going to be up for it. I don't think they're ready for something like that. Defensively, they are solid, but I think Penn State's just going to be able to ride kind of that home crowd, that home environment, and be able to get the win here outright. I like them to win by at least a touchdown here, so -4.5. I'm going to take that all day. Penn State -4.5. Looking ahead to the matchup against Ohio State next week. Kansas State and TCU. Probably very similar to what TCU played last week. Offensively, the numbers are very different here from Kansas State to Oklahoma State. But I think defensively, you're going to get a high scoring game here from these two. TCU has the number 70 scoring defense. Kansas State has the number 14 scoring defense. So maybe not as high scoring as what Oklahoma State was able to do against TCU, but TCU staying at home here in another key matchup against Kansas State. I like them still to win. But I think it's going to be a very similar game to what we saw last week from this TCU team. I think they get the win, but I like the field goal advantage here for Kansas State. I'm going to take the plus 3.5. Could they win it outright? Absolutely. TCU coming off a really hard fought win, double overtime, and it's going to be hard to kind of keep that energy up in a game that you just come off of with that, and it's hard to turn around quickly and play a very physical team like a Kansas State uh, a week later. So I like Kansas State here plus the points. They might get the win outright, but I still think TCU will pull it out maybe by one or two. And then some other notable matchups here that I wanted to just highlight. UNLV at Notre Dame. I'm watching Notre Dame closely. I want to see, what is this team? How is Marcus Freeman improving over the course of the year? Is he improving over the course of the year? What does this offense look like? How is this going to impact ultimately at the end of the day Ohio State's strength of schedule as well? Losing to Stanford obviously didn't help, and that was at home. UNLV is a better team than Stanford, and I think they'll be able to play them close as well. I think the spread right now is like minus 27.5. I didn't like it. It stinks to me. I don't want to touch it. Something seems off. I don't think Notre Dame has beat a team by 28 points all year. Maybe they have. I don't know. But I think UNLV at least keeps it closer than that. But the number just seemed off to me, and I didn't feel comfortable taking it. I do like the over here, 47.5. I think that's a pretty safe bet to get over that number, though. Utah State and Wyoming. Not a sexy matchup by any stretch of the imagination. Wyoming's at home, though, and I like them minus the 4.5 over a Utah State team that I think is a little surprising to people, but I think Wyoming is still the better team, and being at home, I'm going to go ahead and take the points there pretty easily and safely. Next up, Texas A&M and South Carolina. South Carolina surprised me. They've won four straight. They lost their first two games, and they've been on a winning streak ever since. Texas A&M, they've been up and down. Obviously, the loss to Appalachian State, the close loss to Alabama. For some reason, they just can't seem to play consistently well against the opposition. They play very, very down to whoever they're playing against. And I think this will be a close game. South Carolina being at home, I honestly think South Carolina ends up beating Texas A&M. And getting the points, I'm going to take that all day. And then lastly here, Ole Miss plus 1.5 at LSU. Ole Miss is the 7th ranked team in the country, guys. Just think about that for a second. The 7th ranked team in the country is going to LSU, and they are the underdog. An unranked LSU, right? And they're the underdog. I wasn't sure if I wanted to take this or not. It stinks to me, much like the spread in the UNLV Notre Dame game. But I just can't. It seems off, but sometimes people just bet a lot of money on LSU. There are a lot of bettors that look at the name alone, see LSU at home. It's a tough environment going down there. But Ole Miss is going to be ready. It's nothing that Lane Kiffin hasn't been in. It's nothing that Ole Miss hasn't been in. And I think that Lane Kiffin has this team playing really well all year. He's had them playing really well all year. And Brian Kelly has not had LSU playing up to what I think we expected. Granted, it's his first year. They'll be back, I'm sure. But I like Ole Miss on the road, getting the win, and I like them plus 1.5, absolutely. So now that being said, watch them lose by a point. But what can you do? I feel pretty comfortable with that 1.5, though. And that is going to do it for us. As I mentioned, I like to do this every Friday here and just keep up to date on kind of my progress from a betting perspective. Always bet responsibly. If you are following or if you are tailing on these, definitely put those in the comments. Put any additional spreads, bets, anything that you like for this weekend in the comments here below, and let us know how you're doing as well. And as always, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening to the Morning Scoop podcast. Be sure to download this episode and leave us a 5-star review wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you are watching on YouTube, be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel so that you can stay up to date on all the additional content coming out from this channel from various sources like Kirk Barton, Bill Greene, Nevadabuck, Phil, myself, TJ. I mean, there's a ton of resources and a ton of material that's coming out here from Buckeye Scoop. And if you aren't a member, definitely check out BuckeyeScoop.com. Sign up today and check out the Ask the Insiders board. There's a huge community of Buckeye fans there waiting to get in conversation with you about a number of different topics. So check out the website today. And as I said, if you aren't a member, go ahead and sign up so that you can have access to the Ask the Insiders board and all the additional content that is being put out. Again, thank you for listening as always, and thank you for your continued support. My name is Ryan McClincy, and go Bucks.